Welcome back to the Mind and Money podcast. I'm Sherry, a financial coach.
And I'm Val, a financial planner. And today we are talking about credit cards 101. Speaking from experience, when I was, I want to say 18, I walked into my RBC branch and I was depositing something. And the teller said, "You're eligible for a credit card. Would you like one?" And as every 18-year-old does when they're faced with adulting questions, I just smiled and said, "Yes, sure." No explanation. No education on it. I think it came in the mail then. So I had an RBC Visa at that point. No idea how it worked, how to use it. It just appeared then on my online banking as well. So what we're doing today is talking about all things credit card for that person that walked into the branch and really should have had this lesson beforehand.
It really is crazy how they dole out credit cards to young adults. Like they're on college and university campuses, just giving them out to basically anybody who's willing to sign up for them. And sometimes they're like, get a free Frisbee if you get this credit card. And lots of promos too, like get 0% interest for 6 months. They're encouraging you to not only sign up for a card, but then you already have one, trying to get you to sign up for another one. And yeah, the lack of education that comes with it, the brochures that come with it that are just such tiny print with so much information that nobody's ever reading. And even if you read all that information, it doesn't necessarily help you understand how to best use a credit card. So you got a credit card when you're 18. Mm-hmm. Without a whole lot of information. Did you end up carrying debt and paying interest on a regular basis, or did somebody kind of tune you in along the way?
I want to say mom or dad said always pay it off. So I always paid it off. There was years in college for sure that I did because I leaned on them as tools, right? Because they're a tool that we need to build our credit, but they're also a very dangerous tool. It's like the chainsaw. It can do a lot of good things. It can do a lot of damage if used improperly. So with the credit cards, the things that I wish I had known was start small. I think that my original limit was $2,500, and every time they offered me a limit increase, I said yes. Typically, it was just like clicking a button on online banking, or maybe they mailed me something and said it was happening. So I was like, yes, of course, I want to have as much credit limit as possible on my credit cards. I think by 25, I had close to $30,000 to $40,000 between a couple different cards, which is like mind blowing.
And yeah, lots of people believe the higher limit, the better. Mm-hmm. And in some cases that is true. But I think before, I don't know when this changed, but they were able to increase your credit limit without even asking. And now that it's a requirement that they get you to approve it versus before they're just like, well, this person's paying their bill or this person's getting close to the limit. They could use a little more room and pay us more interest. We're going to increase that. So let's start right back at the basics with what's the difference between a debit card and a credit card? And this, I think, is more confusing now than ever before because I think every single debit card that I have has a Visa or a MasterCard symbol on it. So it's a combination debit and credit card. You can use it online to purchase things like a credit card, but the difference is that the debit credit card actually takes the money right out of your bank account right away, where the credit card is you using debt to make that purchase. And then you get a separate statement for that. Usually, they encourage you if you sign up to go online. So a lot of times we're not even getting statements in the mail anymore. Right. So it can be hard to pay attention if you don't remember, especially for individuals with ADHD, to go in and check and pay their credit card each month.
I find especially when there's multiple credit cards, from multiple institutions, to have all the different apps or the different logins on your computer, that becomes an extra layer. I just recently talked with a client and she's doing a refinance and consolidating debts in there. And I'm like, we don't want to do this again in 5 years. So we need to eliminate some of these, right? So yeah, basing off of interest rate and going, okay, which one charges us the least for the lines of credit? But for the credit cards, I'm like, we don't need 5 credit cards. Which ones do we want? /need.
Which ones make the most sense to keep and which ones. And then also if you're thinking about closing accounts, like which credit card have you had for the longest? Do you need your credit score to be at a certain level anytime soon? It's a consideration. But when deciding what's best for you from a credit card perspective, the bigger thing to focus on is what is going to help me be successful financially in the long term. And if
100%.
closing your oldest credit card is going to help you do that, like screw what it's going to do to your credit score, because that can recover.
Yes.
But if having 5 credit cards leads you to having 5 credit cards that are almost maxed out and you're carrying a lot of debt, that's more detrimental overall, but also to your credit scores. So what else do you wish you had been told about a credit card very early on?
I think the aspect that, like, yes, the debit Visa, that's coming from your account, where the credit card is, you're borrowing that money until you pay it back. So you can pay bills with it. I never have done any cash withdrawals, but I know cash advances have wicked fees with them. I've come across clients and friends that have done those before when they've been in tight situations. If you can avoid it at all costs, I would say, and I assume you would echo, do not do a cash advance with your credit card ever.
With a cash advance, so if you go to a bank machine, an ATM, and take out cash on your credit card, you are paying interest from the moment you withdraw that cash from the ATM. Whereas one of the biggest misunderstood things, I think, too, with a credit card is when you will pay interest. And if you pay off your credit card balance in full every month before the due date, you will not pay interest because there is what's called a grace period. So say your credit card statement closes on the last day of the month, and then your credit card payment is due on the 12th. As long as you have you started the month by paying the previous statement off in full, as long as you pay it off in full before the 12th, and we've got to allow for some online transfer time to happen, which is generally, I think, 2 to 3 business days. The more wiggle room you can give it, the better. But as long as you're paying it off in full each month, you will not pay interest unless you're taking those cash advances. But lots of people think that you're paying interest all of the time. And if you are carrying a balance month to month, you are paying interest all the time. You've got to fully clear that debt each month to avoid interest. And it can be really helpful in situations like, say you have a benefit plan and you go to the dentist and it costs $800 and you put that on your credit card. And then it takes a couple days for that payment to come through from the benefit company. So then instead of that $800 coming out of your bank account, it's coming out, you're putting it on your credit card because you know that money's coming in. So that's a big thing too, is that I wish I had been told, like, don't use your credit card to buy things you can't afford. Use your credit card with a plan for how you're going to pay it off, ideally before the statement payment is due, so you can avoid that interest.
But I think too often they're used because it's buying things we can't afford. If we don't have the money in our account to pay it off.
And sometimes, like when our back's against the wall and we need to fix a tire on our car or something like an extreme situation, which we also have other episodes on how you can help mitigate those things. But sometimes there's those things that come up where you don't have a choice and you need the car to get to work or get your kids to school or whatever it is. And I want to encourage those to be the exceptions and not the norms, because like, I think we talked about this in a recent episode around paying off debt, that if a credit card has a balance, the best thing to do is to stop using it and switch to debit and then make those payments on your credit card, really be taking that debt down versus the whiplash effect of taking as much money as you can when you get paid, putting it all on your credit card, and then having to use your credit card to live off of. Like, it creates that cycle, and that cycle often leads to us not paying attention and that balance just creeping up bits by bit.
Yeah. Yes. So when it comes to the definitions around a credit card, your credit limit, that's the maximum amount that you can borrow. So as we said, start small. You don't have to take the advances when they come to you. If they send you that letter or that notification, you don't have to say yes. The minimum payment is the smallest amount you need to pay monthly to avoid penalties. I can remember my dad saying, he was like, never be in the position when you are paying just the minimum on those credit cards, because you're avoiding penalties, but you're still incurring the interest charge if you're just paying the minimum payment.
Yeah. And One of the things that Canadian credit card companies have had to include on statements for quite a while now, like at least a couple of years, is how long will it take you to pay off your current credit card balance if you only pay the minimum payment?
And don't add more transactions. Like, don't build it up higher.
Yeah. And some of those, like, it's scary. Like, you're going to have this debt for like 25 years if you just pay the minimum. And like, you're going to pay for it over and over again because the interest is going to make the cost of that thing go up so much more. So, and one thing too about credit limits is, yes, there's a limit. So say you have a credit card has $1,000 limit, but you go and charge something and it makes it like go over your limit. So say you're at $1,010 that you owe. The credit card companies will allow this in many situations to a limited amount, but as soon as you go over your limit, if they let you, every credit card company is going to be a little different. They start charging you extra fees, like over limit fees. So they get you with fees every which way, not just interest, late payment fees, over limit fees. And it's really just something to pay attention to. And if you're carrying a balance on a credit card right now, I encourage you to go and have a peek at your last statement and just see how much you paid in interest, because this can be pretty shocking.
Yeah, when it comes to interest rates, most credit cards are between 19 and 25%, I would say. The most typical is like 20.99, 22.99, like somewhere in there. So the interest rate is not awesome. And when we're looking at making strategies, we always look at, is there a different place? Like, if we're going to have a balance on a credit card and we want to pay it down, is there a different place that debt can sit that it will cost us less? So typically a line of credit has about half the interest rate, typically, but not everyone has access to lines of credit. So it's very situational, but look at those interest rates, look at what you're paying in interest, just to bring awareness. It's not to bring shame and the other heavy aspects of it. Like, it's just like, okay, this is what it's costing me, bring awareness. What can we do about this?
Yeah. And just a little bit more on interest rates. We just say interest rate and we throw that term out there, and it can often just, 29% interest. That sounds crappy, but what it actually is the APR. So the annual percentage rate. So when you hear that a credit card has a 29% interest rate, that's actually the interest rate you would pay annually. So if you have a balance, if you multiply the balance by 29%, and then divide it by 12, you're going to get around what you would pay per month. Now, they do break it down daily, so a 31-day month is going to be more than, but that's just a good idea for you to get what the interest rate is going to be. If you're thinking about charging something to a card that you know you're going to carry a balance, use that information to consider, like, oh, this is going to cost me $50 a month in interest each month. Do I really want to do that?
Yeah. It's that pause. It's that pause and that like moment of crunching the numbers to be like, is this worth it?
Is it worth it? Yeah.
Is it worth it?
What is it really going to cost if I do this?
Yeah. So that's how kind of the workings of a credit card are. The best way to use it is to utilize it, make sure you have the money and pay it off before it's due / at due date in full. The benefits of credit cards is that they do help to build our credit. I can remember going to get a phone plan when I was 16 and they're like, you have no credit. And I was like, well, how do I build credit?
I'm 16.
Yeah. They're like, you need a credit card and then come back and see us. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they build credit in that sense. Yeah, there's different ones that have different rewards and point systems. As we talked about, it's not worth keeping multiple point systems and awards cards open if it's going to impact your financial health negatively, because we have access to all of that.
And I find lots of people really think that the rewards are a better benefit than they actually are. And lots of people like, I want to run all my spending through my credit card so I can get these points. And then we look at, okay, but right now you're carrying a balance, and that balance is costing you X amount in interest, and the points are getting you X amount. And often reward points can be very cryptic about how much they're actually worth. Cashback credit cards can be a lot more clear around what the actual cash benefit is. But one of the things that kind of irks me is some cashback credit cards don't actually give you control. They build up the cash back all year and typically pay it out once. And usually that's in November and December. And when you just get a credit to your account that you're not really deciding to get, it often goes unnoticed. From a rewards perspective, I do prefer a cashback credit card that over a points credit card, and one that I can decide when I use the benefit so that I'm paying attention to it versus it just automatically paying out. So there's lots of different reward options, and usually they're not benefiting you as much as you think you are if you're carrying a balance.
Yes. And when it comes to tips for first-time credit card users, what would you have to say? Like, I would say look for a no-fee credit card.
100%. Having a no-fee credit card as your first card means that you can hold that card forever and ever and not have to close it because it no longer gives you the benefit. You don't have to use it forever and ever. You might have to use it once in a while so that the credit card company doesn't close it down.
Right.
But you can keep it so that it can give you longer credit history. And if you jump in with a card that has a fee right away, especially when you don't fully understand what the use and the ins and outs of the credit card is and what the benefits are, it can be best to have one no fee, just plain Jane, and have it be simple so it can be something in your financial portfolio to help your credit for the long term.
Yeah, and I would say keeping that limit low, setting up reminders of when to pay it off, so 2 to 3 days before the payment's due, paying it off in full. And this part we had talked about it before we began, because it's confusing. You can also get gift cards that are prepaid Visa cards, right? But you can also do a prepaid credit card. So let's between those three talk about the differences. So when you get that Visa, that's a prepaid card, it is just like a gift card that you can use for essentially anywhere that accepts Visa. Yep. And they're kind of weird too. I don't know. It used to be like this. If there was a balance, I don't even want to speak to it, but it's weird. Yeah, like it's weird. So I've never liked giving those because they never seemed to be totally what I wanted to give someone. But that's truly just a gift card. It does not impact your credit, does not build your credit, but it has Visa on there, which is a bit of a mind game. A prepaid credit card is a way that I know a couple clients of mine have started rebuilding their credit. It's by like the one, it's not MBNA, I don't think. What's the Capital One, maybe?
I think Capital One is big for a prepaid credit card.
Yes. And that's where you can get a credit card, but you have to put the money up front. Like you're the lender in that sense, right? Like if you need want a $500 credit card to start rebuilding your credit, then you put $500 on the card.
And then you can spend that like a regular credit card. Mm-hmm. And then if you were to close that account, and a lot of times too, if you start with a prepaid credit card to reestablish your credit after a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal, or you just don't have credit and you're starting from scratch, you can often, instead of closing that prepaid credit card, once you've got a little bit of a credit history and improved your score, transition that card to a regular credit card. So then the benefit of that is that it keeps that credit history there too. But if you were to close that credit card or transition it to a regular credit card, you would then get the deposit back that you paid for that card. So you're right. You're lending yourself the money so that you can have that credit card reported on your credit report each month.
Yes. So those are the differences. Typically, I would say like the credit card I started with was not a prepaid. I'll say they typically offer you something else first. Their money to lend to you.
Yeah.
But just to understand the differences, if you're getting that credit card, understanding when to pay it off, how to use them to your best advantage. And
look at your statement every month. Whether it's online or you get it in the mail, look at your statement every month, because there's credit card fraud out there. There are companies that have errors. So I've been in both situations where a credit card has been charged fraudulently by somebody else. And also once I went to a hotel and I paid for it through an online booking site, but then the hotel actually charged me too. So I was double charged. So just keep an eye on it and make sure that the transactions are all yours. And then if they're not, if you notice errors or transactions that aren't yours, so if there's an error, so what I did in the hotel situation was I called the hotel. I'm like, check this out. I paid here, and the hotel actually reversed the charge. So the hotel was able to correct it. But if you see fraudulent charges or errors that the person who charged your card isn't willing or able to correct, call your credit card company. And what you're going to do is file a dispute and say, hey, this charge wasn't me. And you're going to give them some information. And often they can tell you how long it's going to take. Sometimes it takes quite a while to get the credit on your account, but generally they investigate and then they'll credit your account. And I've never had a situation where they didn't credit my account. So just know that if you see things on there that don't belong to you, raise your hand. And checking your statement regularly is going to make this easier, because if you're trying to dispute something that's months old, you might get pushback and not be able to actually dispute it.
Yeah. The other piece too would be, and I want to say the number's on the back of your card. It's not that hard to find. Just flip your credit card over. But when it comes to the fraud aspect and paying attention to what's going on, how often do you come across clients? Like, I would say maybe 8 out of 10 have charges that are reoccurring on their credit card that they didn't realize they had. It's like a subscription they signed up for, the free trial renewed. And then you're like, okay, well, if we don't need these, let's get rid of them.
100%. Like almost everybody has something when we really tune in to start paying attention to our, not only our credit card transactions, but also our bank transactions. And I actually had a client meeting just before this. And one of the things that I've really been realizing is that companies, their top priority is to figure out how to continually get our money. And this often leads to something in the lines of a subscription where you're paying once a month, once a year. And to end those subscriptions, in a lot of cases, you have to jump through so many more hoops than you had to give them your money. So being able to sign up online, but then you have to call somebody or go into a branch to cancel something. So I think that's ridiculous. It sets everybody up for failure, especially ADHDers who are like, nope, not going to go through those extra steps that push me beyond the executive function I have for today. So like, I think there should be rules in place that I should be able to cancel something the same way I signed up for it. And
yes,
I don't know who to tell about that. It's probably never going to happen, but no, like, even though there's barriers. So for example, my client today had a subscription that she was only able to pause online for 3 months, and then it just kicked in again because she has to call call to get the subscription canceled. So it's a little ridiculous, but it really helps you tune into where is my money going, what transactions are coming through each month.
You said it. So I have come across this often, and I've seen it myself, where typically furniture is a big one. Furniture, yeah.
Oh my God. They got my number.
Yes. So buying couches or whatever it may be, and then they offer you an in-store credit card or a store brand credit card. So let's dive into those for a minute. What are those and how are they different?
So typically they get us because they offer us a discount. Like if you're at the register or you're walking through the store, like if you apply for this credit card, we'll give you 10% off your first purchase, and you can charge whatever to the card up to this amount, and it will be 0% interest for X amount of months. And that's can be helpful, but it can also set us up for failure. So generally a store credit card has a higher interest rate. And if you go beyond that 12-month zero interest period or whatever the interest period is, you are often back charged interest for the whole interest-free period. So to really take advantage of that no interest, you have to have it paid off in full before that period ends. And yeah, they get you.
That is not talked about enough.
It's not talked about enough. And we think, oh, it's easy. They said I could have it. And having multiple, I think at one time I had a Home Depot card, I had a Brick card, I had the biggest one, the first one that got me was, I can't remember the name of the store. Oh, Crate Design, like Pine. Oh, I have all of that. Come over to my house one of these times, listeners. And yeah, I still have that furniture. And I think it's because I realize that I probably paid a lot of interest for it. And it was like, I'm going to keep it because it's good quality stuff, but also I
paid for this 3 times over. So
Yeah. And I don't even remember. I don't remember what the terms were. I don't remember the interest. I just remember that I ended up with a monthly payment every month. And then there was a monthly payment for the bed and a monthly payment for the dresser. And it just all added up. So yeah, store specific credit cards, read the fine print, make sure you know what the actual ramifications are. If it is a 0% for a set period of time, and the people that are selling you these cards, they don't want you to fully understand it because they get benefits and commission through getting credit cards in our hands. And really anybody who's selling you on a credit card, whether that's a bank teller or an advisor or something like that, generally they're getting a kickback because they have monthly quotas.
Or when you walk into Canadian Tire or at the gas stations. Have you ever been approached at the gas station when you're trying to pump gas?
No.
Yeah, anyways.
They get benefits. They make it seem like you're getting all the benefits, but really they're getting their pockets padded, which like it's their job and I get it, but having some education around that is going to help you in the long run. And another fee that we didn't talk about is foreign transaction fees. So when you go, so we're Canadian. So if I go and use my card in the US or anywhere else outside of Canada, there will be kind of two hits. The one is if it's $10 there, not only am I going to pay more because the Canadian dollar currently is not worth as much as the US dollar, but there's also going to be, in most cases, for most credit cards, there are some that don't have them, but there's going to be a fee for that credit card company to do that conversion for me. So just know that if you're spending outside of the country that that credit card was issued in, you're going to get hit with some foreign transaction fees as well. And then just want to finish it up with a few myths around credit cards. And the big one that I see all the time that really burns my ass is that it helps your credit score if you carry a balance on your credit card.
I can hear it in your tone.
It's complete bullshit. But here's where here's where this myth comes from. Part of what makes up your credit score is your utilization rate. So your utilization rate is how much of the credit that you have available to you are you using. So if you have $1,000 credit limit and at the statement closing date, which is the only time your credit utilization matters. So the day that your statement closes, that's what's reported to the credit bureau. So on that day, you're using 10%. So your utilization rate is 10%. And ideally, we want to have it be over 1%, below 30% for sure, but ideally below 10%. And if you have 0%, so if you've just paid your credit card off in full just before the statement closing date, not having a utilization rate or having a rate of 0% can have a small negative impact on your score, because the credit score is a score of how well you're managing using debt. And if you're not using it, that can have a small negative impact on your score. So generally we want there to be a small balance on the statement closing date of your credit card. But then, like we mentioned before, if you pay it off in full before it's due, that is not going to hurt your credit score. You are going to be fine. And even if you're paying your credit card off like every week, and sometimes there's a 0% utilization rate reported, that's going to be okay too. It's
like drops in the bucket in the big scheme of things. Yeah.
Yeah. But to have a utilization rate reported, you do not need to carry a balance. That is trash. And then, closing a credit card will increase your credit score. In most cases, closing a credit card, the longer you've had it, it will actually hurt your credit score. If you have a credit card that you've had for 10 years and you have one that you've had for 1 year, closing the one you've had for 1 year might actually improve your credit score, but closing the one you've had for 15 years is probably going to hurt your credit score. But overall, focus on long-term financial health and what's going to make the most sense. Last myth is that, and this is myth-ish, is that all credit cards have high interest rates. And for me, I would consider high interest rate above like 12, 15% is a high interest rate when it comes to a credit card. But there are credit cards out there that have lower interest rates. So 9%, 12%. So if you are looking for a credit card right now, have a look at the lower interest rate options and really
see what's out there.
Broadly look at which card is going to be the best for you from an all over perspective, rewards, annual fee, all of those things. So shared a lot of information that we wish we had known when we got our first credit cards. And if you have any questions about them, please feel free to reach out and get in our DMs on social media, and we will do our best to answer so that you make sure you've got all the information you need if you're considering getting your first or another credit card.
Yep. Don't just take what's handed to you, and feel free to subscribe and follow. Thanks for listening.
We can't wait to see you next time on the Mind and Money podcast. Take care.